Did you know avoidance can turn a molehill into a mountain? So, in this episode, I'm going to share what avoidance is, how I used it to cope with life, the mess it created, and how I got unstuck. Welcome yet again to our Unwrapping Courage, a gift for your soul this season, our 25 days of soul work. My name is Jelisa Dallas, and I am an author, coach, and consultant where I help individuals and organizations break barriers to their success, bolster their belief for greater confidence, and build courageous behaviors to optimize their life and create belonging internally and in community. So thank you for joining me yet again. For those who have been following along with me, and for those newbies, hello. Again, Jelisa Dallas here. I'm so excited that you are here. And before we jump into the conversation, because you know I like to get in there, we have a complimentary resource that we would love for you to grab at www.GoBraveLLC. Again, that's www.GoBraveLLC. Because in this complimentary resource, you can follow along with us on this journey of 25 days of soul work. And I would love for you to do me a favor. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share this with someone you know, because I know this is going to be a valuable piece of information for anyone who would want to get from where they are to where they want to be. So, what is avoidance? Well, I'm going to tell you from my lived experience with a few bits and pieces from general dictionaries across the board. And avoidance is a coping mechanism of a fixed mindset. So anybody that's familiar with growth mindset, fixed mindset, the fixed mindset specifically pass up on opportunities for learning. They label themselves by their failures, unfortunately. They're discouraged when effort is required. There is a constant need for them to prove themselves and perform, and they're desperate for confirmation to take action. Ultimately, someone who has a fixed mindset is fairly faithless. So avoidance is also a prolonging of the healing process, typically triggered by anxiety. Unfortunately, the longer we avoid or deny our progress, the longer it takes for those who are called to our voice to experience their breakthrough. Instead of seeing ourselves as valuable, avoidance brings into view the shame, fear, and doubt, making us believe we're not good enough. So for me, because I have to give a story that's connected to this experience and the information that I'm sharing with you. But for me, avoidance looked like maintaining the mask of accomplishment. So for anyone new to me or have just a little bit of familiarity with who I am, I was a first generation college graduate as well as a graduate first generation student, meaning I got my bachelor's and my master's. And I've received several awards, accolades for different things that I did. Now, this is not an opportunity for me to boast, but an opportunity to make a point in that I often displayed this, my degrees, again, my accolades, my awards, trying to hide the simple fact of who I was and the depth that I brought to the table from my lived experience. So I maintained the mask of my accomplishments. Avoidance looked like for me lacking discipline over my soul, meaning I failed to renew my mind. I failed to submit my mind on a regular basis to God and to his word, which led me to affect my mood as well as my motives and motivation. Avoidance looked like for me making obedience optional, meaning I justified reactivity over responsiveness. If you hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you back. I mean, in a passive sort of way. Avoidance looked like for me, in addition to my justification of reactivity over responsiveness under my making obedience optional, was compromising by way of silent agreement. I didn't confront or share that a truth was being demystified or being distorted, but rather I silently agreed and compromised. Blaming was what avoidance looked like for me. Instead of taking ownership of my own actions, I constantly blamed the people around me, the situations around me, and the circumstances around me, my job, my relationships, this, that, and the other, instead of taking full ownership of the things that I actually could control. And so, what were the results of this? I'm so glad you asked. I relinquished the rewards of healing. Rest and peace lingered far from my reality. What I didn't know was that healing happens when we are honest with ourselves. And that was just not true for me. Also, as a result, I pressed pause on my impact, delaying deliverance of others who were called to my voice. Just like everyone, my words revealed my heart. And at certain times in my life, my heart was extremely wounded. And as a result, I was fearful of what would come out of my mouth. So I hid those words. I hid my heart. I also hid from truth. I gave the enemy ammunition. Instead of me being the target to the enemy's devices, I was the arrow impacting others with words and actions that were not kind. I found more comfort in entertaining my soul instead of exalting my spirit. As a result of avoidance, I became fairly lazy. Work was at the bottom of my priority list. Yes, it's the truth. I isolated myself. And there is a difference between isolation and incubation, for example. Incubation is when the Lord separates us, consecrates us, sets us to the side to build us up, to encourage us, to lift us. Whereas isolation was self-infused and self-driven and essentially selfish. So I isolated myself. And I also developed FOMO. For those who don't know, it's the fear of missing out. I got so involved in everything. I was, as they would say, an overachiever. I did all the things, I connected with all the people, but it led me to a place where I was resisting stillness. And so, because of my avoidance, I resisted the stillness that God was inviting me to. And again, I just got overwhelmed, burnt out, and all the things in between. So, how do you know when you're avoiding something? How does someone know when avoidance is the reality of their situation? Well, one or more of the following three things can happen. Number one, we accept distraction. Social media goes to sleep with us. Social media is a part of our day to day. We can't live without it. We become addicted to that form of connection. And that's just one example. A distraction could be overworking. A distraction could be over-invested into our kids. Granted, I don't have any kids, but that could serve as a distraction. And that's how we know that we're in avoidance. Number two, we become disillusioned, meaning we put on a pedestal the need to compare ourselves and compete against others. And to be honest, what is life when we're doing that? That means we're not being authentically ourselves. But that's another conversation for another day. And then number three, we commit to destruction, meaning we actually form some intentionality around being disaligned, unable to advance because we're living a lie. Again, going back to what we started with, self-sabotage. So let's pause and take a deep breath because I know this was heavy. I know this was a lot. So take a moment to take a breather because for me, in the place that I am in now, avoidance, it's almost like, ugh, like I want to get it off because the veil of avoidance can really be weighty. I mean, it's a veil, it's a covering. And so in talking through all of that, it's just a reminder, like, I don't want to be in that place anymore. And I try my best to stay away. I implement the soul work that I've been talking about over the course of this series. And so my hope is that you're able to do the same. And with that, I do have a suggestion, rather an invitation to do a little bit of a self-inventory, because I believe this is what this recognition causes when we're talking about the veil of avoidance, that we do some self-inventory. And I actually have a resource on my website called Elevate Your Confidence. And in that, you get a series of questions and a series of opportunities to address some areas in your life where you need to do a self-inventory. So I encourage you to get that resource. Again, you can visit www.gobraveloc.com for that. But thank goodness that we don't have to stay in avoidance, because here is where we begin the soul work process, where avoidance brings us to awareness. It helps us to admit and accept our need for change, supports our adjustment toward alignment, and equips us to advance in life, business, and for the kingdom. We learn to recognize where we are to bring about change. And this is the beginning of owning who you are, operating in authority, and optimizing your life. And so we're going to end today's conversation with a question that I would love for you to share in the comments. How can you reframe your approach to challenges, focusing on discipline as a catalyst for growth rather than resorting to avoidance? And I look forward to reading your comments and learning more about your experiences. Until next time, let your soul work be your best work to a better you. Later.